Live with part 2 of the blogging series. How's everybody's quarantine hair? Look at mine. My God, I need a haircut. I don't know about you, but I certainly need one. We're back on part 2 of creating the perfect blog post. And the first version of this, or part 1, was all about doing the research. And if you haven't seen that one, head on over to the We Are Here podcast Facebook page and check out the recording. See if I can just share it in the stream right now. Check out the recording of that if you want to learn all about researching the blog, researching blog posts. And it's one that I will do a wrap-up blog post, in fact, how meta, where we can, I'll give you a single blog post that'll have everything that we've covered. But I just dropped in, no, I didn't. There it is. So I just dropped in the chat there. That's part 1. Today we're going to go into part 2, which is like the structure of a great blog post. Okay. And the whole idea, remember, is this is somebody who wants to take content marketing to the next step. You've already done a lot with maybe, let's say, Facebook, Instagram, whatever else that you're using for, creating and getting content out now. And blogging, in my mind, is the number one way to sort of control that whole story, to have that dialogue, but on your own terms, in your own brand, in your website. And one of the major benefits of creating a blog, it's not just like that attraction, right? It's not just search. Like if you saw in part 1, how I identified opportunities and how much traffic we could potentially get from it. But it's also it's part of your sales process. It's part of your support process. It's part of your business and brand identity. And the easiest place to start with blogging is to create blog posts around those frequently asked questions, right? So if you're, a consultant, maybe like myself, or you have you're an accountant, or you have a restaurant, whatever it is, you have those frequently asked questions. Where do you get your produce? How do you do taxes for S corps? How do you build a website? And if you're putting out some of your best knowledge into blog posts, you can then use that material to send to your potential customer in a pre-sales process, right? Look, there's a lot of competition out there, no matter what business you're in. And if you can get good content put together that you can repurpose in these other avenues, you're just going to make the whole business better. Not just, I'm doing a blog post, I'm getting more people coming in the door. It's, hey, people are coming in the door now, and they're saying to me, well, prove that you're the best for this product or service. Well, Mrs. Customer, I can. Here's 12 blog posts that I've written all about this topic, specific to you. And maybe that's what brings in these customers in the first place. But for those customers that don't come in through your blog, this is great supportive material. It should help you close the deal, emphasize the brand, educate the customer, get them into a process, right? There's a lot of use to a blog, not just, hey, can I get found on Google? Okay. So today we're going to talk about structure of a blog post and the design, if you will, of a blog post. So let me go ahead and pull this up. Now, there's a lot to this as well, just like there was a lot in the research process. So we're going to hit on some of the more useful cases here. And let's just start with the readability of a blog, right? Now, again, many of you out there use Squarespace or Wix or something else. I am obviously a WordPress person. People come to me for the WordPress stuff, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is just a default theme, and I don't want to get too in the weeds of design. Design is subjective, and there's a lot of things that can change. But I've seen firsthand a lot of entrepreneurs using something like a Squarespace or a Shopify for their site, and they're putting in their blog, which is step one. Like, it's good that you're doing it, but you also have to pay attention to the readability. And this particular theme is called Astra, ASTRA, I believe. Let me just double check that. Yeah, on WordPress. And the readability is pretty good. Like, I would say that on a scale of 1 to 10, this is probably, I'd say, an 8.5. Okay. And what am I looking for here is, number one, I'm looking for, can I read the text? Right? I've seen a lot of sort of style blogs and fashion blogs, people who are selling product online, use these themes and these templates from other providers. And my God, I can't read the text. It's super tiny. There's not good spacing. There's not good structure, to reading a blog. And this is just a sample page right here. But you can see, look, we've got the uppercase to start the paragraph. We've got a pull quote, off to the side. There's a gallery block with nicely positioned images. This is just an example of all of the different styles of this particular theme. But the idea is, when you structure it, it's more readable. And you want to pick a theme and a template that you could easily read. There's this, I forget the actual phrase, but there's this thing of the step away test, right? Or the 15 feet away test or something like that in the design world. Whereas if you design something on the page, step back from your desk as far as you possibly can. I can't go that far back, but you step back 6 feet, 8 feet, 15 feet. Can you still read what's on the screen? Can you still see the most important call to actions on the screen? Certainly sitting back 15 feet trying to read a blog post is a little bit challenging. But the idea is, if you can step back and say, I can still read this, then you're fairly good to go. And remember, everyone is reading things on many different devices. My phone's on the other side of the room, but they're on their phone, their tablet, their laptop, their desktop, their TV. There's different screen sizes. And at the end of the day, you want to have something that people can read without it being exhausting. And I've been in situations where I'm reading these like I don't know what it is, like with fashion sites, e-commerce fashion sites in particular. Everything is like a lot of white space, which is great. It loads fast. The pictures stand out. You can read this stuff, or you can see this stuff visually, but you can't read the text. It's tiny. It's tiny. And that's not what we want. So in most cases of, whatever website building platform you're on, WordPress or Squarespace, I'm just trying to find. So in most cases, no matter what platform you're on, and again, this is particular to WordPress, in this particular theme, every theme is going to be different, so take this with a grain of salt. But if you're having trouble reading this, like this font size is size 15. I might bump it up to, let's say, an 18. Right now, look at the impact that had. It might be hard to see, you watching this on your phone or your desktop, wherever you're watching it. But that was a pretty big difference. I can read this stuff a lot better now, right? And I'm sitting back maybe 3 feet from the screen. And you just want to play with making sure that your blog is as readable as possible. If it's not, and when you go to look at the stats on your blog, people are saying, you start looking at the stats on your blog, like, well, nobody's reading these blogs for more than 5 seconds. Well, what's the problem? Is it the topic? Is it the content? Is it the readability? So you want to check all that stuff. Now, design is subjective. I'm not trying to say that I've chosen the best theme in the world, but if we take a look at the one that I run for the We Are Here podcast, this particular, and you can see the difference. Let me just get out of this. I didn't save that, but you can kind of see the difference if I just tab through these two. Might be a little hard to see, but on my blog posts, there's a lot of white space, and it's very condensed to, reading. That's the other thing. I've seen people with blogs that take up the entire width of the screen. And you're visually just like scrolling with your eyes across the articles, and you're like, man, this is just hard to read. When I'm on a desktop, it might be fine when I get to a mobile device, but when I get to a desktop, it's very challenging. Right? It's just a lot of work for you to actually read a post, and that's not what we want to do. So pay attention to those elements, right? If we take a look at the structure of this blog post in particular, this is what I would call a standard blog post. Like, I have blog posts that I put out that are topical to, major categories in my business. So this one in particular is about marketing. It's about product market fit. It's about selling a product and why it's so difficult, right? And I have these concepts. But I've been sort of trained over the years to, it's not just this wall of text, right? And I'll even critique my own blog posts here because I don't think I have anything in the way of visuals in this blog post. So I always try to go for at least one visual in the blog post, whether it's just an image or a graphic or video, something to break it up. And I fail to do that in this blog post. But we're not going at this at just writing this wall of text. When people say, well, how long should my blog post be? Like, how much text should I be writing? Well, there's a bunch of school of thoughts around this, right? There's, some people say 500 words. Some people say 800. Some people say 1,000, right? There's always like this give and take of like what the perfect blog post is. There isn't one. It's all about the content. Now, if you did a blog post that was just these first two paragraphs, yeah, that might fail to do really well unless it's just an amazing 2 paragraphs. But I sort of err on the side of most of my blog posts are generally at least 500 words. At least 500 words, I'd say. Right? And when I structure that, it's just not 500 words right down the page. I use headings. I use the heading tags to, pull focus into different sections so that it's broken up. This isn't rocket science stuff, but for a lot of people who are just getting into blogging sometimes, I've seen some folks, God bless their heart, they write the entire blog post in, let's say, Microsoft Word, and they just come into, let's say WordPress, and they just paste the entire contents here. It's okay to do that so long as you, kind of help reshape it later. But the idea is you want to break up these sections, right? You're planning out your content. For me anyway, I'm always thinking of like, what's 3 major topics that I want to get across? My introduction, my 3 major topics, and then my conclusion, right? And this is sort of all wrapped around every blog post, I hope, has some core value for the reader. It's not just a blog post to get a blog post out. It's, will this blog post give the reader something of value? It's a hard thing to measure. You don't know until the people actually start engaging with it. But that's what you want to lead with. So introduction, 3 major points, usually separated by those big heading tags, and then the conclusion. What can you walk away with? What is the action that somebody who's reading this can walk away with? And then further than that, use of bullet points, use of list items, I should say, clearly defined links, right? Every blog post I'm thinking of is, no more, unless this is like a traditional list of things. I'm not trying to put out a ton of links in every blog post, because then what's the real action here? Right. So again, in the intro of this, hey, here's a link to my Sunday Notes email. And then I think I have one more list or email in here about reviewing your website. So I have a review your website service. If you click that, it'll bring you to the review your website service page. So I know that, look, these blog posts are effective because I'm not dousing it in links that I want people to click on. I know that there's only a few call to actions in here, and those are the two. And I try to break up those areas as consistently as possible. Now, if you took a look at something that is a little bit better, so let me just take a look at this blog post. So in this blog post, which is really about one thing, and this is probably one of the shorter ones, is, hey, here's a common question. And I actually see that I've left it uncategorized. I guess I should fix that. This is what happens when you start breaking down stuff live. This blog post is specific to the similar question I get all the time, is like, what's the best microphone I should buy for the cheapest amount of money? It's this microphone right here. They actually don't make it anymore, so I do have to update this post. But look, it's visual. Here's the photo. Here's a summary of it. It's $69, or it was $69. Simplicity is the reason. And guess what? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter about your microphone. It's all about the content that you're putting out. But yeah, I mean, this one has more links because I'm making sure that people are, no matter where they're scrolling in this article, they're able to click and buy this microphone. It'll go off to Amazon, right? So as they scroll, there's always an opportunity for them to click and buy this, because in this context, I'm thinking, well, somebody might be reading this on their mobile phone as they're scrolling. I don't want them to have to go up and down and try to find the link again. I try to put that link in every section. This is a very rare instance. It's a unique instance. It's a very hyper-targeted instance. Like I'm saying, I want people to find this microphone. So the strategy is a little bit different. But again, I'm breaking it up with an image. And I'm breaking up with even just a minor little quote. It just allows the reader to scan a little bit easier and allows me to sort of just break up that monotony of text. Okay? Does that make sense? And if we look at something a little bit more extreme, and that's the How to Start a Small Business podcast. We talked about this in part 1 of this. This is the #1 page that brings traffic to my website. This is really robust, right? This is not necessarily a blog post, but it could be a blog post for you. And this is 12,000 words. And if we pay attention to the design here, in this case, here's this bigger sort of dedicated space to the introduction, like why you should be reading this blog post. Here's a sort of storyline quote I give before you get into the blog post, and then a larger table of contents. So you can see every section that is outlined in this post. And then the strategy here is, here's a quick start. So look, if you don't want to read through all of this stuff, just hit the quick start. It's not going to work while I'm logged in. Hit the quick start and just read this stuff here. And if you choose to continue on, then you can continue on. Okay. So this is a much larger post, much larger piece. It's a very valuable piece. Like when we talked about research before, we talked about researching those keywords, finding the ones that you can really compete at, that's going to bring the most potential revenue or customers, brand building to you. This is certainly one of them for me. And the structure here is I'm really starting to break this up with icons, more lists, Instagram embeds, other pull quotes, the use of lists again, and then the use of imagery. Like as you scroll through the different sections, there's more engaging photography. or images in this case, right? Sort of breaking up each section with some kind of image or photo that is relatable to the section ahead. So this section ahead is all about creating a story arc and being on the hero's journey, and here's a picture, of a little girl that has sort of got that hero mask on, if you will. And that sort of resonates, with this section. As we move into the next section, like goal reviews, obviously this is like a planner. It literally says goal review on it. So I couldn't get any more accurate. And again, breaking it up now with tables. So this is me using a table to break up the content. It's really about, and another screenshot video. So it's really about crafting something that isn't just so, monotonous. 12,000 words, lots of content here. How are you going to make it so that the person can read, and more importantly, how they can scan these sections? That's the way that I approach blogging, is like, just like you, I'm busy. Everyone's busy. Is everyone going to read a 500-word blog post, 1,000-word blog post? Probably not. Like the majority of people, probably not. But if they can scan and find the one or two pieces of that content that relates to them, they're more apt to engage with it, share it, tell somebody about it, click a link, tell you did a great job or whatever. And this is how I approach, structuring blog posts: visual, engaging, good copy, good text, good clarity. Arguably, this gets pretty monotonous down here because this is all sort of links out to other things. An ending, actions that I want people to take once they're done with this stuff. That's how I structure visually blog posts. If you have questions, go ahead and post that. I can try to answer this stuff during the live stream or after the live stream. And now we'll go into looking at the structure in the back end, and more importantly, the structure for SEO. Okay. So last week, let me just switch my thing while I just do this. Last week, when we talked about planning, we talked about, or not planning, planning and research. Showed you some Google results of where I rank for how to start a small business podcast. And I'm going to show you today how that is structured behind the scenes. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't do this on every single blog post. Only the important ones. Only the ones that I know are valuable to my business. Let me do this. Just trying to get... Okay. So in the previous video, I showed you about researching the podcast stuff. Here is the result of my top earning piece of content: how to start a small business podcast for beginners. It's on page 2 of Google. Love it to be on page 1. Page 1 is actually one of those really difficult pages to rank for in terms of what Google gives back for results. Like right now in this SERP result, and again, we looked at this stuff in the last episode, but here's an ad at the top. Okay, obviously I can't compete with that unless I'm paying for it. Then WeWork, which is a pretty big brand, they have this listicle of like top podcasts, not how to start a podcast. This is all metadata being, pulled in, featured snippet. Then it's actual podcast links to Google Play's store, right? So I can't obviously compete with that. 15 best business podcasts, again, for startups. It's just not the same type of content. It's not a guide, right? How to start a small business podcast. It's not a guide to how to set up a podcast. All the way down to like, these are all results of like top 15 podcasts, top best podcasts, how to, the how to a business, how to run a small business. That's podcast.apple. So very hard to compete on this page 1 with all of this stuff. So I'm on page 2, sort of in the middle-ish, right? These are all ads, 1, 2, 3, 4 ads. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on page 6, right? But you can see here how to start a small business podcast guides for beginners. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And my little emoji, the little award or the little medallion emoji. This is the #1 guide for starting a small business podcast for your brand. 12,000 words of all the podcasting advice I can give you. 100%. It's supposed to be free. And for some reason, they're cutting off that meta description. But that's okay. I'll show you now what that looks like in the back end. So in WordPress, scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see this section down here where, maybe I'm off by this pixel count. So I use a plugin called SEO Press. Yoast is another one that's very popular on WordPress. But this is basically giving you the ability to write those more important Google results that we just looked at. So I can change the title here, and this is the title that will be shown in your search requests versus the title here. So the title here is How to Start a Small Business Podcast. That'll be at the top of the blog post. The one that's actually getting indexed and searched is How to Start a Small Business Podcast Guide for Beginners with that emoji award, right? So the idea here is you're optimizing your blog post for clicks in the search engine. I'm as blown away as you are by trying to frame that in my mind. And yes, it sounds challenging, and it is. But once you learn how to do it, you can compete in the broader market. So you think about writing the content, writing great content, and you're optimizing for the reader on the site. But then you'll also have to think about, how do I engage with so much competition that's out there, right? Again, if I go back to this search result, how do I engage with all of this stuff on this page? Now you're back to competing with other people. How do we do that? Well, you can change the title and try to stand out. Now, I could make the title a lot more engaging, right? The last podcast guide you will ever need in all capitals, right? I'm not down that road yet, but I did add that emoji, that little award emoji, which allows it to stand out a little bit, just giving myself a slight chance to get another click. And then the meta description, what you see here, this is the #1 guide starting a small business podcast for your brand, 12,000 plus words, all the podcasting advice I can give you 100% free. Now in this result, the free gets cut off, and I think it's by this pixel count. You have 160 characters maximum, but there's assuming here this pixel count that's getting cut off a little bit. It's always going to depend on where people are searching for this stuff. But here I am again, trying to tell people this is the #1 guide. This is the guide. If you're a small business starting a podcast, you're looking for this. And by the way, it's 12,000 plus words. My God, won't you be able to find everything you need here? And it's 100% free. So it's trying to entice that click. And then on the right-hand side, SEO Press gives you a little bit of a preview of what that's going to look like, right? So this is what it looks like in your regular browser, your desktop browser. And then if you want to see what it looks like on mobile, this is what it's going to look like on mobile. So it's giving you that insight, right? This is the SEO Press plugin for WordPress, and also Yoast is another one. I won't go into the advanced section, but another key component to this stuff is the featured image, right? So the featured image of the blog post, and in my particular theme, it has sort of this brand color like overlay, but it's this big engaging microphone like right in your face. It sort of looks like the emoji microphone. And this is the image that's going to be shared around social media. So again, when we talk about how do we get people to click on this stuff, not just in Google search results, but on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you have to have an engaging featured image, one that relates obviously to the topic. And most people, when they think podcast, they think microphones. That's usually the number one question. I'm going to start a podcast. What microphone do I need? Oh boy, you're in for a ride. So I try to pick one that's as engaging as possible. And this particular plugin allows me to change those same titles and descriptions and thumbnails different for, let's say, Facebook or Twitter. Right? So if I know that there's a particular thing that people like more on Facebook, a title or an image, I can change that here. I can get more accurate, more granular. Same thing for Twitter. And that allows me to just optimize more, right? It's the name of the game. With a guide like this, that's like big, 12,000 words, it's a number one traffic driver, I can fine-tune things as I go to try to move the needle up a little bit more. That's the intent. Redirection, we won't get into that. That's a little bit more technical. I don't really pay too much attention to this either. Target keywords, this particular plugin will go ahead and analyze, like if there's a particular keyword that you want to rank for, or that you're hoping to rank for, this plugin will go through and sort of analyze and see where you're at. I don't follow this 100% to the T. It will only make you more sort of robotic in creating your content. I just make sure I'm not doing anything super wrong. This could certainly be one of them. Like if I went through and add some alternate text to this, that means that if the image is not loading or somebody's using a screen reader or something like that, these images will have a description. And maybe if I spend some time doing that, I can move up just a little bit in the search results. Same things with the headings. It's saying, hey, none of your target keywords are found in an H3 tag. That's pretty inside baseball. I'm not super worried about that. So whenever you see like these reds and these oranges and these yellows, I'm not like freaking out about it. Unless none of the keywords show up at all throughout my content, right? Or something's really broken, in, let's say, a meta robot or an outbound link. Like I'm not spending all that time here. You just use it as a guide. But I wanted to show it to you as a way to say, like, look, there's tools in place that can help you along with this stuff. Okay. It's pretty technical, right? I don't know. You let me know. You ask the questions and I will answer them. Even if it's not during this live stream, if it's if you're watching this video afterwards. And that's where we're going to end it today. A little bit over time, 35 minutes. I like to keep these at around a half an hour. But I wanted to talk again about visually structuring your blog posts, right? How do I break that up? How do I make it readable? How do I use headings and lists and tables and graphics and icons and videos to sort of break up the monotony of a wall of text? Even here, like bolding some of the more important facts in these bullet points. It just helps these sections stand out for anyone who's like a scanner reader like myself. You just go through and you scan the headlines to try to find the information you're looking for. Visually impactful photography or images. Start with a base that you just have a really good readable blog post. So that's not hard. You're not squinting, right? All of those things. Then all the way down to the structure of your SEO, your headline, your meta description, the images that you use for featured images. One thing I didn't touch on is categories, right? So categorizing your blog posts, and don't go crazy with the amount of categories either. Like this one here is 4, which is probably one of the ones that I do a lot. It's probably one of the more categorized blog posts that I have here. But the idea here is if you have these things categorized well, somebody says, well, I want to learn more. I want to learn about all of the podcast stuff that you write about, Matt. When they click on the podcast category, they'll see everything I have about podcasts, 11 tips for starting a podcast, all the podcast episodes, right, that I've done, what makes a podcast post, right? Like all of this stuff, that I've done around podcasting. So categorizing it helps people find and discover more content of yours. So visual structure, written structure, SEO structure, site structure. It's all about structure in today's video. Thumbs up. Hope everybody enjoyed it. I know it's pretty technical. If you're starting a blog yourself and you have questions, let me know. I can help you out. If you're somebody that says, you know what, man, I got a website up and running. Can you take a look at it for me? Go to southcoast.fm, resources and services, and review your website page. What I do is I go through and I record a video just like this, breaking down all of the things that I think you can improve on your website. So if it's about starting a blog and you already have a blog and you want that feedback, I can do that for you, send you a private video. It's just yours with all of the key components that you can fix, do better, structure better, ideas and opportunity. And that's it. Southcoast.fm/subscribe to join the mailing list. Sundaynotes.email to join the best piece of content that I put out. It's the weekly newsletter. It goes out every Sunday, usually in the morning. And it's business advice. You might like it. Sundaynotes.email. All right, everybody. See you in the next episode.